Hi, I'm Josh Dines. I'm an orthopedic surgeon at Hospital for Special Surgery that specializes in sports medicine. And through my interest in sports medicine, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of tennis players. This started back probably almost a decade ago with my work with the U.S. Davis Cup tennis team, uh, and has transitioned to now working with the Champion Series tennis tour. And during that time, one of my biggest highlights was getting to work with some of the top tennis players in the world, of which one of them was James Blake, and he's our special guest today here. So I just want to thank James for being here, and James, hope you're doing well. And
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm James. Happy to see everybody. Happy to see you, Dr. Dines. And first of all, congratulations. You got a new baby, new addition to the family. So congrats. And as for me, I'm James Blake. Been on the Champions Tour now for about 5 years, which seems crazy. Seems like I haven't been retired for that long, but it's been a ton of fun and competing against guys that I competed on the main tour and have become just lifelong friends. Andy Roddick, Marty Fish, Mark Philippoussis, John McEnroe still playing, which is incredible. And we've had a lot of fun, and we hope to put on a good show, and that show will eventually be back, and we'll still be ready to put on some good performances.
No, it's great, and it's amazing how you're part of just such a great generation of American tennis players, and now getting to watch you guys still playing the Champion Series tour is just a ton of fun for myself, and I know other tennis fans, because it's still all the players we grew up with, and still very competitive tennis. I know you guys take it seriously and get competitive, so
Yeah.
it's fun to watch.
Yeah, thanks. We have so much fun, and as I've said to people's fans, they ask, how serious are you guys taking it? Well, once we get on the court, we're taking it very seriously, because we're all competitive people. That's how we got to where we got to in our profession, and we had that passion for the game, but we also had the passion for winning. So we were all extremely competitive. The big difference is we don't prepare the same. We used to live, eat, breathe, sleep, everything tennis. It was our profession. We did everything we could to be as prepared as possible on the court. Now we all have lives. Our locker room conversations are very different now. It's not about which electrolyte drink you're using and how hard you're training and everything you're working on. Now it's more about changing diapers and kids going off to kindergarten and what preschool are they in and that kind of stuff. So we just don't have the same preparation, but once we get out there, we're still trying. And I think the one set is perfect, because if we started doing 3 out of 5 sets, it would just be we'd need you a lot more than just a little bit we call on you. We need paramedics on site.
I agree. I was going to say, selfishly, I'm glad it's not, because I think I would be called in a lot more. So, or the tour would come to a quick end with a lot of.
Yes, it would.
But I mean, you hit the nail. It's fun to have kind of, sort of had the privilege of growing up with you guys, where the locker room has really changed. And now we are, kind of talking about kids in kindergarten and learning remotely.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is that, you brought up the point that you really kind of train differently. It used to be kind of 24/7 tennis, and what can you do to optimize your performance, which to me, in some ways is almost easier when you're doing it all the time than kind of turning it on and off for the tour. So what are you doing differently, kind of prep wise? You're almost like cramming for a test in these situations, which could be dangerous.
It can definitely be dangerous, and I learned that probably early on, because you think you can get away with doing the same things you used to do. Playing hard, matches are so different, because you play hard, you stress your body so much more. So playing hard without preparing is dangerous, as you just said. So I learned that every time when I would try to play recently after retiring, I would possibly injure myself and then put myself down for a little while. So I realized I needed to do some sort of maintenance, and that it can be everyone's a little different with how they feel like what makes sense. For me, I never was big into yoga, but yoga is becoming much more popular for people my age and older. And but for me, it's just going out for like real easy jogs. I got one of those bikes. I don't have the Peloton. I got a different one, but one of those, just doing the easy ride and getting the muscles moving and doing a little bit more stretching. I think that's something that people sometimes don't take as seriously when they're not training specifically for something or working extremely hard, but just staying so that you're physically able to handle when you do have to kind of turn it up and ratchet up to really that 100% when you're out there and you want to beat up on Marty Fish on tour or something like that. So I think just staying at least close enough to being able to, you can't train like I used to. I mean, it was every day, 4 or 5 hours a day. Now, once in a while getting out and just doing an hour or half an hour and just getting that in when you can. And sadly, I've joked that before now that at my age, even walking starting to seem like a workout, doing a long like hike kind of with the family and stuff. It feels like it's strenuous, but doing things like that really do help because it just gets your body moving and you feel like you're able to kind of peak when you need to, or just like your peak is a little different than it used to be, but be able to actually do that without being extremely sore or even hurting yourself.
I think it's a great point you made about stretching also, because people almost don't consider that part of a workout and they feel like they have to work out for an hour. And I've really kind of changed along the lines of what you're talking about, which is, the first 15 or 20 minutes will just be stretching. I'm not looking to set any records. I just want to kind of prevent injury. And I think yoga becomes a great vehicle to increase your flexibility, or, Pilates classes, or just doing your own
Yeah.
kind of stretching, foam rolling is critical to prevent injury and get you ready to at least work out to prevent injury.
Yeah, I should have specified that, especially before, because it used to be that, when you're 18 years old, you can jump out on the court and play full out, in 5 seconds, you're ready to go. And now if I try to do that, if I go to a workout, if I'm going to the gym and going to do a hard workout, I need to be in my house or at the gym 15 minutes early, 20 minutes early, doing that foam rolling, doing that stretching just to get ready. Because otherwise it's just a recipe for injuring yourself. So yeah, getting yourself ready and prepared. Your muscles just don't kind of turn on as quickly at this age anymore like it used to. So I think doing that foam rolling, doing the stretching before any sort of tough workout is really important.
That's a great point. The What have you been doing? Obviously, kind of, COVID has sort of forced us, at least sort of, if not inside, kind of, out of gyms, out of the tennis clubs,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. What are you doing at home? You mentioned the bike. Anything else
Yeah.
you're kind of doing to kind of cross train?
Yeah. So it's I mean, I do feel very fortunate. We do have a little bit of space in the backyard. We've got a trampoline. My kids have me jumping on the trampoline every single day, which, as much as they joke, they do tire you out. I say, okay, I got about a 15-minute limit of you guys forcing me to jump nonstop, but it's fun and it burns my legs a little bit. But otherwise, like we've had a lot of fun in the driveway and in our backyard setting up little obstacle courses. So we do where you jump over the cones, you run in and out of them. The kids get their scooter and they do around a little track, and then you run and you toss a ball into a hoop, and then you jump on the trampoline, and just any way to kind of change things up and get the kids moving. I absolutely love it. Anytime they say, no, I want to do it this way, there's no argument for me as long as it's involving moving the body and just getting out there, because you can get stuck in a little bit because we are home. We're going for walks every day and trying to keep our distance, try to go early in the morning. There aren't many people out. And so you stay active. And really, for me, anything you can do to stay active. I'm really lucky in our backyard, in our driveway. I've got one of those little junior nets with the foam, like not the foam, but the pressureless balls. And so we got the kids in the junior rackets and we got them out there hitting some tennis balls and stuff. And anything we can do to keep them active. And, I feel really lucky that we have some space. If you don't have any space, it's amazing how many workouts you can figure out with just body weight, whether it's push-ups, crunches, chair dips, jumping jacks. If you got a jump rope, that takes almost no space whatsoever, because I know people are in situations where they don't have, thousands and thousands of square feet or huge backyards or anything like that. So if you have just a very confined space, there's plenty of little workouts you can do, just calf raises. There's tons of things you can do just in a very confined space that hopefully just keep you active and get the blood flowing.
That's a great point. I saw you on Instagram jumping rope, and it's not easy. And I've got not that I didn't have a ton of respect for them before, but the fact that boxers, I mean, they can do this for hours. Like I do it for a minute, I'm exhausted. So
yeah, it is tough.
Great. And it's a little off topic, but you brought up, just doing fun, different things with your kids, not just young kids, but I think that's a great point. Parents get so focused on, having their kids specialize in sports, and, we see that way too often, and that leads to its own set of injuries and problems. I think this, even starting at a young age, is doing different things, making them have fun while getting some exercise does translate to sports and athletics later, but at least you're not doing the same thing over and over, and potentially, subjecting them to injury at a young age.
Definitely. I've always thought specializing too early is dangerous. And so for kids, my kids right now are 7 and 6, and I try to get them to do everything and, play a little soccer here and there in the backyard, play a little tennis, play a little basketball, whatever they can do. And I want them doing that and figuring out what they have fun in, what they like the most. And I agree that this is maybe a time, it's obviously tragic for so many people, but you try to find a silver lining of spending that time with the family and realizing what's important. It isn't, you hope the kids maybe that are a little older than my kids realize that soccer tournament, that football tournament, that basketball tournament, it maybe wasn't the most important thing in the world like you thought it was. So you get a little perspective, and you can, get away from that specializing at such a young age and think about, hey, what is actually just fun about it? And you can get the fun out of basketball or soccer out of just practicing and just enjoying it. And then you get back to the competition and hopefully have a pretty healthy perspective on the competition, and how hard you've been working, but also that there are other things in life.
Great point. I mean, and I think a lot of people have at least kept a good perspective and trying to find the positives here. To your
Mhm.
point though about that, obviously for kids it's a little easier, to have like a net and the lower compression balls and even hit
Mhm.
somebody your level, or even kind of higher level weekend warriors. Is there anything that you can do kind of in these sort of confined spaces? Because clearly at your level, timing is so important. Is there anything you do for really in a tennis specific sense? I mean, can you work on your ground strokes? Can you work on your form? Do you watch it in a mirror? Is there anything you can do that's more tennis specific so you don't take too many steps back?
Yeah, so if I was still on tour and doing during this time, the things I'd be working on right now. First of all, the probably the first and foremost thing that I would be thinking about is not burning out, because you don't know when your next event is. So if you're out there just grinding every day, working so hard, and you don't know if it's going to be 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now, that can be really taxing, and it could just burn you out mentally and physically. But so I would find ways to try to make it fun. But one of the things you can always work on is footwork. You don't need a lot of space to do. Like I said, you can do jumping rope. There's a lot of footwork drills you can do just with a few balls. You can do little spider drills. You can get onto a court, even if you're not playing. You can go out on a court by yourself and do drills. Do up and backs, moving forward, touching the net, backpedaling to the baseline, things like that, where you can do a lot of footwork drills that really work the leg, and the really fine tuning that footwork. And then if I was actually still playing on tour, I know this maybe doesn't relate to the weekend warriors because you're not focused on one specific thing, but if I was on tour, very rarely do you get the opportunity to really work on a specific technique thing, because you're so worried about the next event and they're coming up next week or 2 weeks from now. So if you have something in your game, whether it be a grip change, whether it be some sort of technique that, there's a hitch in one of your swings or anything like that, I would take this time to try to be productive and work on that, because that's not something that you're used to doing every day that's going to burn you out. It's something that you can get a lot of reps in and feel like it's still fun and it's still improving your game. So for weekend warriors, it might just be getting out and working on your serve, and you don't get a lot of time to do that. Just get out there with a basket of balls and do that every other day. It takes 20 minutes or something, and you'll be amazed how much improvement comes from that. And do it without sort of changing or breaking the social distancing rules. If you have one person that you can find a court that is safe or something, maybe there's a way to do that. But just still staying safe. There's still ways to do it. I think footwork is the biggest one.
That's a great
If
point.
if I was on tour, that'd be the first thing I'd be working on it and doing it, just to the point where I'm working really hard, but also not burning myself out.
And look, I mean, I was the furthest thing from ever playing on tour, but I think, you raise a great point, which is, and it applies to myself and other weekend warriors, where I always have an excuse because I've got 2 hours to play on a weekend. So that's
Yeah,
not going to be the time where I start working on things. My backhand is bad. So I'm going to start, kind of still hit my chip backhand and try to run around it. This
yeah,
becomes, and I always have the excuse that I don't have time to practice. This is the
yeah.
perfect time to work on those things.
And for more so than we on the weekend warrior side than the pro side. But the other thing that you can do that's safe is find a wall. Go hit on a wall. My wife actually is started taking up tennis not that long ago, and she's kind of bummed because she's missing out on her once a week lesson. And I said, honestly, the best thing you can do right now that we have time, is let's go find a wall. Go hit against the wall. And I said, you'll be amazed at how much of a difference it makes and how good it is for your game, and how you feel like you probably won't miss a beat. And the weekend warrior level, that would be fine. Obviously, if you get to the elite level, Roger probably isn't hitting on a wall. He is hitting on a wall,
He is.
doing the trick shots, but I don't think it's really going to, push him to that next level.
Challenge is not going to get him ready for the French Open.
Not exactly.
What up? So that you raise a really interesting topic, which is this unknown of when kind of the actual tour is going to start again.
Mm-hmm.
I guess two questions. The first of which, how, if you knew when it was starting, let's say it was the end of the year and you're going to get ready for Australia, the Australian Open, how much time do you sort of take off and then leave yourself to get ready to be in playing shape? Just to use that as the baseline. And then it's, what do you do in a situation like this where you don't know? It could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months from now.
Yeah, right now I feel for the tennis players. It is it is tough to have the unknown. For getting ready for Australia, almost every year, what I would try to do is I would try to take 2 weeks completely off the court, and that's the only time the year you really have that. I would take 1 week totally off. That was hanging with friends, golfing, just doing what I can, spending time with family, and then the next week was back to training, getting in the gym, doing some fitness, getting back on the bike, and then you'd start ramping up. Then you'd start getting ready for Australia. But for right now, with the fact that it's been off already for nearly 2 months, and it's going to be off for most likely quite a bit longer, I would take, like I said, I would probably take the first couple weeks off, and then I would start training to the point where I was having fun on the court, but also working hard so that if it does come back, I'm not far away. Because I think a lot of people, if they get too far out of shape, it is so difficult getting back into shape. It takes a lot longer. You have to do it safely. As a doctor, you can't just say, okay, I've taken 2 months off. Let's get right back to training the same way I used to train. So you have to ramp up slowly and slowly. So now I would try to stay in the shape that I know that if I need to ramp it up, it's ready to go, and then that's not a problem. So for me, the unknown would be very difficult. I think a lot of players are going to find out about themselves, about what they can handle and how much of this is going to get to them, and how they feel like they can improve. And so it's going to be a tough situation. But I think when this is all over, it's going to be interesting to see which players took this time to really use it to improve certain things, if they've made big adjustments in their game or if they've just kind of stagnated. I think the ones who stagnate are going to start falling back, because there's going to be people that are going to take this time to really improve their games.
Yeah, no, and it'll be kind of fun to see. Well, it'll be fun to see anything at this point, sports wise.
Yeah.
But that'll really be kind of telling over the next sort of, hopefully, year. Hopefully, we're back pretty soon. Seeing who's
Yeah.
time, and there, you mentioned kind of the silver lining before, getting to spend time with your family and things of that nature. The same applies to professional athletes. It's the people who kind of use this time, see it as a positive, I think really will hopefully serve them well in the long term.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't want to take up too much of your time, but quick question: as now putting on a different hat, as somebody who runs one of the kind of biggest events on tour, from a almost more of a political type question, how tennis is at least a safer event sports wise than a basketball or a wrestling or
Mhm.
football. But even there, you've got a lot of interaction with ball boys, chair umpires, fans. Well, how do you foresee this kind of being rolled out, as we start getting back to a new normal?
Yeah, so for me, I think you're right about tennis. The actual interaction, just one on one, is not as great as basketball, where you're banging bodies. Football, where you're engaged in contact all the time. But I think tennis, sadly, may be one of the last sports to come back, mainly because I think it is so worldwide, so global, that every country has to have this under control before we can really open up. Because you can't have Wimbledon. You can't have the French Open, a U.S. Open, if Spain is still locked down and Rafa Nadal can't travel there. You can't have it if Italy is still locked down and Fabio Fognini can't get there. So I think you have to have every country under control to make it so that everyone can travel and be at each open event. And that's where I think it's going to be difficult, because I do think the interaction is okay. The fans, that's going to be a different story. That's more on the medical experts to decide, okay, can we have stadiums that we can only fill a quarter of the way, that we have to have 4 seats in between every person, or something like that. I don't know how that's going to look. That's very up in the air. And the interaction with other players, with volunteers, I think that the tough thing to say, okay, well, why don't we just do it with no fans for a while and see how that works? But like you said, you've got ball kids, you've got umpires, you've got volunteers, and the transportation and everything. And I do think if it was, if one player was infected, those locker rooms are so close, and everything, that it could spread so quickly. And that as a doctor and someone who lives in New York City, how quickly this can spread. And we want to, I think, be safe. So I think tennis is going to be one of the last sports to come back, unfortunately. And I wish it would come back sooner. I miss it. I miss watching. I miss playing. I miss, seeing the guys and the women on tour competing. And we're in such a great age of some of the best players we've ever seen. And so I miss that. And we're missing out on historic Grand Slams. But I think it's all for good reason, for safety. And I mean, you could speak to that a lot more, being in New York and knowing knowing the specifics of it all there.
No, it's true. But I mean, you raise great points about just the international nature, which makes the game so great, will actually
Mhm.
probably, one of the issues going forward. So, so,
Mhm.
so James, I mean, you've been so generous with your time. We can't thank you enough. Any last words of wisdom for the weekend warriors or anybody?
Well, the weekend warriors, just like I said, have fun. Make sure that you're having fun, and there's going to be ways to get better. If you can find a wall, hit on a wall, it makes such a big difference. And then the footwork. I've always said to people that want to get better, that don't have a lot of time, or they don't have the training or the the coaches that are the best. I never played a match where I said I moved my feet really well and I played well and I played poorly. If you move your feet well, it's going to make the rest of your game so much better. So work on that footwork, and hopefully you guys will have fun and come out of this with a silver lining of being a better tennis player.
Great, James. Hope to see you in person soon, but send my love to the family. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Same to you. Thanks, Dr. Hans.